All right, well, everybody, welcome to Biscuits and SEC's Week 6 preview. We're going to look back a little bit at the storylines of Week 5, and we're going to talk about the big games in Week 6, and then we'll just go game by game and spit them all out. Here with the Hammer. Hammer, what are your impressions from week 5?
Yeah, it was a crazy week as we're accustomed to in the SEC. Some of the bigger storylines, obviously, that stuck out to me. I thought Alabama and Georgia sort of separated themselves even more. As we're getting into conference play, they both had big matchups, obviously with Arkansas and Ole Miss, and they took care of business. So both very impressive wins. Really had no trouble, and those games were out of hand pretty early. So impressive stuff from them. Obviously, Kentucky getting a big upset. They're still unbeaten. I know a lot of Florida folks are upset with Dan Mullen, so definitely a storyline to keep track of. The LSU loss, same thing. Coach O's seat only going to be getting hotter. It was a big win for Auburn, a gutsy win with a little bit of Bo Nix heroics sprinkled in there. And then obviously the A&M loss. So Mississippi State looked a lot better than I think a lot of people were anticipating, and A&M continues to look like a bad football team that's currently 0-2 in the SEC and about to be 0-3 most likely with Bama coming to town. So, a ton of good storylines from Week 5, and like I said, nothing new for SEC fans. It was a great week.
Yeah, it looks like Alabama and Georgia, the only team that can defeat the other one is the other team because it's those two and the rest of college football at this point.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. We'll see if anybody else can, rise up to that level. But definitely, as it stands right now, those two seem to be head and shoulders above everybody else. And I would be shocked if it's not those two in Atlanta. Based on what we've seen here, and who knows what happens then. I flip flop between the two. At one point, I'm thinking maybe Georgia's the better team, and then maybe Alabama's the better team. So thankfully, I think we'll get that settled on the field in Atlanta, and that's really, if you're an SEC football fan, that's all you can hope for is the two top dogs in the league getting to square off at the end.
Yeah, I think it's three teams have given up less than 1,000 yards through 5 games prior to this Georgia team, and all three won the national title, I believe. And Georgia is on pace with like 911 yards through 5 games, some ridiculous number. I mean, that defense is just ridiculous.
It really is.
Yeah.
We'll see. Like I just mentioned, Bo Nix had some heroics against LSU. I'm fascinated to see how he fares against Georgia because no one's been able to move the ball. I mean, Arkansas, I don't think anybody was predicting Arkansas to have a great day offensively or even a great offensive team, but they hung 20 on Texas A&M the week before, and last week they got nothing. I mean, just there was no room for them to operate. Never could get a run game going. They're just everything went wrong against Georgia. I mean, I don't know if anybody can score on them. Maybe until that Alabama game,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, and Auburn has changed to a pro spread to what they're running now. They used to do the Gus Malzahn gimmicky stuff, which gave Kirby Smart trouble all the way back at his time in Alabama on through Georgia. Auburn would give that defense a little bit of trouble. I don't know if Brian Harson's spread is really going to stick around and actually be as effective as the Gus Malzahn spread. As crazy as it sounds. Because if they think they're just going to line up in I formation, this Georgia team, it's going to get ugly, and Auburn might not cross the 50.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, like you said, that the Gus Malzahn, he did some gimmicky stuff that gave him trouble. I think in this offense, it seems like Bo Nix, at least last week, had a little bit more freedom to operate, which worked against LSU. I'm just not convinced it can work against Georgia and their front seven. I mean, again, he had some awesome scrambles and was making plays, and I think he was actually Auburn's leading rusher. I just don't know if he can do that against Georgia. And if he tries, I'm worried that, he may take a couple shots and I don't question his toughness. I'd be surprised if he leaves the game, but you can take a shot and get a little gun shy with your legs, which would not shock me against Georgia.
Yeah, which can completely affect your passing game and everything that goes with it as well. I'm looking forward to that
Exactly.
game. I think Georgia's going to cover that. Well, I think it's 15 points, and I think they're going to cover it pretty easily. Um, because I just don't think Auburn can score more than a touchdown. And then the question becomes, can Georgia score 24? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think last week I thought Arkansas was going to be able to cover. I thought they would not score much, but score a little bit, and I thought their defense would hold up better against Georgia. That was not the case, obviously. So I'm not going to bet against the dogs. I think they'll cover that spread as well. I don't really see Auburn being able to score much, and like you said, even with Stetson Bennett back there, Georgia should be able to score 24 points. Penn State, who does not have a great offense, scored 28. LSU got, I think what they have 19 last week against Auburn. So, the Auburn defense is a very solid unit. They're not bad by any means, but Georgia can definitely score more than 24 points.
And people, even before this three safety phenomenon that went on with the Iowa State John Haycock defense and everything, people forget that Derek Mason was the original spread killer when he was a defensive coordinator in Stanford. But Georgia's will just line up if they can and play bully ball. If you can let Georgia run the ball, they will keep running the ball and they will just beat you into submission, as we saw last week. And I just don't think Auburn can stop it. I don't think they have the dudes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought Arkansas would have the dudes. They're renowned as a pretty physical defense. They run a bit of a different system with Barry Odom that sort of, you know, asks you to run the ball or gives you the run a little bit more than I think Auburn will. But either way, at the end of the day, it just comes down to whether you've got the guys on defense that can physically match up with Georgia. And I'm not convinced that Auburn does. They might be able to stop the run a little better. Hopefully Auburn can force Stetson to throw it more than 11 times. But if he got to 20, I would be shocked.
Yeah, if there's 20 passes in the game, that means Auburn's in the game. The lower the Georgia passes, the more of a slant towards Georgia it'll be. I think James Cook has a chance to be a really effective weapon in this game, and I think he'll be used in different ways. Ole Miss versus Arkansas is 11 a.m. on ESPN. Ole Miss a 5.5 point favorite against the Hogs. This is kind of the PTSD game because you go in against Alabama, you go in against Georgia, you get slapped around, you're not ready for prime time. People forget Ole Miss and Arkansas both, just in 2019, were the complete laughing stock of the SEC West. So this is a rapid ascension to the point where the Alabama game and the Georgia game was like must-see television. So don't think for a second these two programs aren't going where they want to go. But the way I see this game, if Ole Miss can go rapid fire and dictate the pace of the game and the tempo of the game, it's advantage Ole Miss. If they allow Arkansas to deflate the ball, run the ball, and everything goes and keeps Matt Corral off the field, it's advantage Arkansas. I think Ole Miss should cover. They should cover fairly easily because Arkansas is thin offensively with what they can do. But it's going to be interesting, and it's a game that Ole Miss can lose.
Yeah, they absolutely can. I'm fascinated by this game as well. Like you said, both teams took a beating last weekend, so it's a matter of who can get up off the mat and get back to work. Because as we know, the SEC schedule is a grind. So, and then these players know that too, right? They understand what they're in for. And a loss, both these teams took a loss last week, but the season's not over by any stretch. So, I think both the teams will be ready, and yeah, it is. It's it's a revenge game for last year for Ole Miss. They, especially Matt Corral, got embarrassed, and people still bring up that 6 interception game constantly when you hear people talking about him. So he's got some demons to face in this one with Barry Odom and that defense. But I think Ole Miss will pull it out. I think it'll probably be a close game. Ole Miss's run defense, it didn't look great against Bama, obviously. So I think Arkansas will be able to run the ball a little bit. But based on what I've seen from Corral, he even though he didn't light it up against Bama, thought he played a pretty good game. There
Yeah.
just wasn't much out there for him to do. So, and he wasn't forcing the ball, which obviously Bama puts you in tough situations and wants you to do that. So I think he'll be ready for this game. I think Lane is going to want to, again, prove a point that last year was a fluke, that last week even maybe was a fluke, and they just, maybe weren't ready for it, whatever the case is. I think Ole Miss will come out ready and win, again, a close game, because they are pretty evenly matched in a lot of respects. But at the end of the day, I'll take Matt Corral over KJ Jefferson. So when it comes down to making the play late in the game, you need to push the ball downfield. Ole Miss has that advantage. So as long as they cannot let Arkansas get out to a big lead, which I don't think they will, then they should be able to hold steady and just sort of outscore them in the end.
Yeah, Arkansas's game plan is essentially what they did to Texas A&M: get a lead and then just dig in defensively and keep them from coming back, kind of holding on for dear life. Also, Ole Miss is favored in win probability in 7 of their last 8 games. What is the game of the team that is favored right now to get the win against Ole Miss?
This coming week against Arkansas?
No. The rest of the season, their win probability is over 50% for 7 of their 8 games.
Oh, who would they not be favored against? Trying to think of their remaining schedule. It can't be A&M, is it?
No, it's not A&M.
Okay. I don't know. I'm surprised they're not. Who do they draw out of the East?
It's a road game at Auburn.
Okay.
Is the team that is favored to get the W. Ole Miss, actually, believe it or not, even if you do superstitious things, they have not historically played well on the Plains for whatever reason. They just haven't played very well. So that one kind of pops up. But their win probability, LSU, they're favored. A&M, they're favored. Mississippi State, they're favored. Tennessee. And all of that's going on. I'm looking forward to next week, by the way, and we're going to get into the Tennessee game next. But I'm looking forward to Lane Kiffin going back to Rocky Top.
That'll be a great atmosphere for sure.
And speaking of Rocky Top, they're getting ready to go into dark mode this weekend, and I go back and forth. One time I look at them, I'll really like them. The next time I look at them, I'll really not like them. I've seen the white version of the dark mode with the black face mask and the black trim with the black outline of the numbers on the jersey, and that looks really good. But I don't know what to make of these uniforms.
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan. I haven't seen the dark trim on the white. That sounds pretty cool, but the all black look they're going with is a little strange to me. I like their traditional uniforms. I think the Tennessee orange is a cool shade, a cool color, and it just screams, kind of traditional college football. So when I see something like this, I'm sort of knee-jerk reaction to say like, oh, this is kind of weird. I saw something on Twitter, so this is not an original thought of mine. I don't remember who tweeted out, but they said it looked like a knockoff Oklahoma State blackout jersey. So we'll,
Okay.
yeah, like I said, I'm not a big fan of it, but hey, if it's one of those things, if the players like it, if they feel like it's going to get them pumped up, then that's great. I think maybe my biggest problem with it is the game is at noon, I believe. So if
should have been safe for a night game. They play at night against Ole Miss the next week.
Right. I get the blackout at night, even if it's non-traditional or looks totally out of the ordinary. At least you can somewhat understand where they're coming from. But a blackout game at noon is a little puzzling to me.
This is just thinking about this. I think that they wanted this game in a game that they are supposed to win because they want to wear it pretty consistently. And if they went out against Ole Miss and just potentially got drummed, which is an option, superstitiously you might not be able to wear those again. And it kind of becomes like the Georgia doing the blackout against Alabama 10 years ago and just got skull drug all over the field. And you didn't see those again, I don't think, until the Cincinnati bowl game last year. So that's what I think is going on. But speaking of Tennessee, South Carolina, good defensive team. Surprise, surprise. Will Muschamp could recruit defensive players. Offensively, though, they struggle. They are an ultimate struggle bus on offense. But the good of South Carolina is going to match up with the good of Tennessee as far as offense and defense, and the struggle on both sides of the ball. So it's a little bit closer to a more evenly matched game than many people realize.
Yeah, I agree. We've talked all year on South Carolina, just how they are very limited, especially offensively, personnel wise. They just don't really have any playmakers. Kevin Harris has been a little banged up, and even when he's been there, haven't been able to establish anything on the ground. But they play hard, and they fight for 60 minutes. So that's a credit to Shane Beamer. To me, I just think being a home game in Tennessee, they're going to have too much for South Carolina to keep up with. The Gamecock defense is solid, but it's not elite. So I think Tennessee will be able to put up points. Not as many as they just did to Missouri, but I still think they'll put up points, and they've looked a lot better since Hendon Hooker took over. So I think Tennessee will be able to pull this one out. With relative ease, I would say, maybe a 10 to 14 point game, somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think Tennessee will probably score somewhere in the 30s, and South Carolina, maybe high teens or low 20s is kind of my guess.
Yeah, as long as they can run the ball. And I like Tyne Evans at Tennessee. I really like that running back. Hendon Hooker is a little bit better with the deep ball. They do have the equivalent of Featherstone out there on the outside. That can't catch a single lick. I've seen him drop passes, just unruly drop passes, almost in a comedic way. So that's a little bit of a work in progress, but you can see the building blocks in place. And Rodney Garner is on the UT staff. And you might not know this because this is a little bit before your time, but a lot of the Tennessee secrets from the late 90s and the early 2000s was in their recruitment of Atlanta, in which Rodney Garner was a key piece of that recruiting team. And he's finally come back to Rocky Top, and you're starting to see some commitments percolate from that area that should theoretically bring Georgia down just a little bit, should raise Tennessee up just a little bit, and we'll see. I think Tennessee has a chance to make this work if they're patient.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Rodney, but that's a great point. Obviously, that Atlanta metro area is just a complete hotbed. And outside of Georgia, when you look at it, I know Clemson raids Atlanta like crazy, and Clemson's a little bit down. I'm not as certain as Paul Feinbaum is about their dynasty being done, as I believe he declared, but. Recruiting is a very fluid space. So anytime you can maybe have an advantage over a team, even if it's just for a year, I think that is huge. And Tennessee needs that to get back, because there's not enough guys in the state of Tennessee to sustain, an elite level SEC program. So they've got to go out to Georgia, to North Carolina, and hit these other states hard and pull kids. So there's a little bit of excitement in Rocky Top, and I think deservedly so. Like you said, they're a work in progress, but a lot of the stuff we've seen on offense has looked good, and some of it has been pretty self-inflicted. You mentioned drops. We've talked ad nauseum on here about Joe Milton not being able to throw the deep ball when guys were open. So you can see, if they had a little better execution, that, all right, there might be something there. So again, I think they'll get the win this weekend, and they'll be making a push to get a bowl game by the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Also in the big games, but LSU is at number 16 Kentucky. Kentucky, a winner over Florida last week, blocked a field goal that made that happen, but offensively, Kentucky has struggled all year. Everybody put Kentucky up on a pedestal. I've said it the whole season. I was worried about this kid flashing once and then just kind of disappearing like Kenny Hill back in the day. That appears to be has happened, because if you look at Kentucky's stat line, their stats look exactly like it did when Terry Wilson was the quarterback and Eddie Gran was the offensive coordinator. Is hand the ball off to that stable of running backs. If they're effective, you can be effective. If not, you're going to be a little bit in trouble.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. Levis, I mean, looking at his stat line from last week, it's pretty bad. He completed, I think, 7 passes, only attempted 17. And his only big play was a bubble screen to Wandale Robinson. So it's not like he made a great throw down the field. I mean, he threw the ball laterally a couple yards, and Wandale took it to the house. So he's struggling, and I think part of that too is outside of Wandale, I don't really think there's guys that can make big plays. So they sort of have to force feed Robinson, and teams obviously have caught on and are just sort of trying to blanket him as best they can. But like you said, it looks like a traditional Kentucky team. They hand the ball off to Rodriguez. They play very good defense. Obviously, the special teams play last week, returning that block, was able to. They just have a lot of good momentum right now. I'm not sold on this Kentucky team, but I think I'm going to take them against LSU just because I don't trust LSU. And we saw Kroger Field was, I hate that name, but Kroger Field was rocking last week, and Florida, I think, had 8 false starts. They were just killing themselves all over the field. And when you think about teams being disciplined and being able to withstand, some of the hype and the atmosphere, LSU is definitely not the first one that comes to mind. So I think Kentucky will be able to run the ball on them. And I think Kentucky's defense will be able to hold up pretty well, again, just because LSU, they can't run the ball. They don't even try to run the ball. And it's really just Max Johnson dropping back, and he's looking for Kayshon Boutte to get open and praying that he does. So if Kentucky can figure out a way to limit Boutte, which is proven very difficult, he's putting up great numbers, but there's just not a lot of movement on the LSU offense unless the ball's in Boutte's hands. So on a road game with everything LSU has going on, I think Kentucky will get another win.
You need to be careful saying things like that, or you'll end up in a fishing hole in Louisiana or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. I make sure that Edo doesn't hear that.
Yeah, he'll get you disappeared. Apparently, apparently that's the
so.
thing he does. So yeah, I can't believe that. You can't be an SEC coach making $1 million a year and then say something like that about a prank call on a coach's call-in show. Honestly, I mean, it's harmless, but you say stuff like that. I mean, it's giving them ammunition. They already want you gone. They want you to react to that because that's in turn going to give them more ammunition to get rid of you.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the wins and loss columns. If LSU's undefeated and he makes that comment, then nobody blinks an eye. But because he's got a couple losses already, with a tough schedule remaining, people are not happy. They jump on him. I'm just surprised he's still taking live calls because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize what's going to happen when your team's not doing well at LSU and you're taking live calls. You're going to get prank calls and you're going to get people that are saying some pretty outlandish stuff. So I'm surprised he's even taking them.
Yeah, it's simmering right now, but they have this week, number 16 Kentucky at Kentucky. Next week, they play Florida. The week after, they go to Ole Miss. After that's Bama. After that is Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, every single one of those games is an expected loss or, at best, a 50-50 coin flip. So, like I said, I just picked Kentucky. I think they're going to win, but if you're an LSU fan, this is the game you really want because Kentucky, for all the good we just said about them, there's also some bad in there. So they are very gettable if you play a good game and can figure out how to stop their run game. So, if you're an LSU fan, you better be praying that they get this win this weekend.
Yeah, and also the scary thing about it, everybody sees the Kentucky game from the LSU perspective. Oh, look at this offense. We have a chance to get them. But you also have to realize that Kentucky offensively has not put it together. They have weapons on that side of the ball. There's going to be some day where that offense just clicks. And whenever that comes out, it'll probably be the Vandy game. They'll waste it then. But I mean, it's something like that. They're
Right.
up 68-0 on Vandy. I am not picking Vanderbilt to cover a single line the rest of the season, no matter how big the number is. And that UConn game just broke me of that. I was like, okay, I give Vandy credit. They're playing UConn this week. No, no, they're dead to me. They're like Oklahoma. I'm going to pick against Oklahoma every game the rest of the season because every time I pick them to win, they screw it up.
Yeah, I'm with you. That Vandy game
Mm.
was painful. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of the highlights, but how UConn was able to score on that fluky long pass play to get the lead was crazy. And then your boy Ken Seals, they left too much time on the clock, and he took Vandy back. I think under a minute left, and they kicked the field goal as time expired. You know, glad they got the win, but yeah, like you said, UConn is terrible, and to need a last second field goal to beat that team just shows you how far Vanderbilt has fallen.
Yeah, absolutely. And just we're not even really going to talk about it, but they're underdogs by 39 points against Florida going into this game, and there is no way that anybody I know is going to pick Vanderbilt in this game. I mean, it's almost a gimme at 39 points because this is one of those things. Can Florida score 50? Yeah, probably even running the ball without a passing game. Can Vanderbilt score it all? I don't know. So
Yeah, I don't think they can. Florida's obviously going to be mad. Dan Mullen is going to have a point to prove. He's going to want to show his fans that he knows what he's doing. So, yeah, this should get ugly pretty quick. It's in the swamp as well, which Florida has played well at home this year. So, it's going to be an ugly game. You just thoughts and prayers to Vanderbilt players and fans because it's going to be rough.
yeah, it's almost like the karma from putting the V on their helmet, like the baseball team's gone the other way. They thought it
Yeah.
was going to help them out, but it's just like, whoa, no.
Yeah.
Also, North Texas is at Missouri. I expect Missouri to bounce back. I think Missouri is a 19-point favorite against North Texas, but ask Arkansas. They can jump up and get you if you were down. And, I mean, missing Jalen Knox, missing Larry Roundtree, it's really affected Missouri this year. And defensively, that team's just back to struggling to the point where they fired their defensive coordinator or defensive line coach.
Yeah, the Missouri defense, I don't know what to say about them. They uh, cannot stop the run to save their life. I think that Nick Bolton loss obviously is looming large, but it's way more than just one player. I mean, they cannot stop anybody on the ground. Boston College ran all over them. Obviously, Tennessee ran all over them, and just did really whatever they wanted offensively. So I do think Kentucky will get back on track this week. But when you look around, the SEC, other than Vanderbilt, I'm not sure I would be picking them to win many games the rest of the year.
No, I don't know if I think if in that Vanderbilt game, I just wouldn't take it because Vanderbilt be trying to lose, Missouri be trying to lose, and it could just end up, it end up with it as a cluster. Now,
Yeah,
the CBS primetime game, I'm sorry about laughing about that. I really am. The CBS
that's okay.
primetime game is Alabama and Texas A&M. Now, Ole Miss intentionally wanted to poke the bear last week. That was their game plan. They wanted to do that because they wanted to see what Alabama looked like at their best because they needed to know where they needed to get. And it turned out to be a 21-point game, and Lane kind of panicked a little bit in the second quarter that allowed that game to be perceived like bigger of a blowout than it was. But I'm like, you should poke the bear every week. If you can get that Alabama, make them do that every week. Every team should make them do that every week because they can't. And that's going to help you get better. That's going to show you where your deficiencies are and how you can affect it in the transfer portal and in recruiting. Now, in this game, Texas A&M's going back there and have a statue playing quarterback. That is generally a death sentence against Alabama. Historically, I mean, that's going back 10, 11 years with Nick Saban. If you have a statue back there that wants to stand in his spot and just direct the game an old school pass. Other than maybe Steven Garcia, I don't know if anybody has done that. I like Isaiah Spiller. I like the other running back, Achang, and also like that little slot receiver. There's some weapons offensively that you don't really know why A&M's as bad as they are offensively. And defensively, they're a good club, especially when they figure out what you're doing. Whenever they have trouble, it's generally from the script. It's all the stuff that's scripted out. And once they get that figured out and start playing the game, Mike Elko kind of shuts you down. So it is important in this game. It genuinely is important to make Alabama work. Make this a methodical, low-scoring game. 17-10. You might lose. You might lose 24-10. But that's better than this getting out of control, because it could get out of control.
Yes. Man, you nailed a lot there. So, yes, first of all, CBS has got to be kicking themselves for choosing this game. Now, obviously, there's a lot of stuff that no one really saw coming that's going on at A&M. But I don't think this is going to be a very good game. As much as I would like to say it will be, it's just exactly what you pointed out. A&M offensively has nothing going on. Their offensive line has not been able to pass block at all. Calzada, I think they're last in the SEC in terms of the sacks allowed. He is not comfortable in the pocket. He's missing receivers. They had a play in that Mississippi State game with Anaya Smith about midway through the fourth quarter, and he just overthrew him, which is when you got your backup quarterback out there. I guess that's just the way it goes. But that's not something that you can do against Alabama. And it was close-ish against Mississippi State, but if it's not going to be, I don't think, against Alabama. And really A&M's only chance, they've got to do a couple things. They've got to be able to run the ball, because like you said, Calzada, he's not going to win the game. So as long as they can run the ball and really run it well, possess the ball, they might be able to keep it close and just sort of pick their shots when they want Calzada to try and make a play. And then defensively, the A&M defense was under quite a bit of scrutiny after that Mississippi State game, which I understood partly just because it looked really easy for Will Rogers. They weren't able to get much pressure. Rogers was out there picking them apart. He threw for over 400 yards. But, you look up at the end of the game, and their offense scored 24 points. They only scored 7 in the second half, and then obviously there was the safety at the end. So, like you said, they were able to adjust and sort of get their feet underneath them. And even though they were still giving up a lot of, kind of dink and dunk passes, Mississippi State was not able to finish drives. So I don't know, they need to get out to a fast start and just really make Bryce Young uncomfortable. They're going to have to be able to get pressure, but not just get pressure. They're going to have to get home, because Bryce Young is slippery in the pocket and he can make plays on the move. And that's just not a good matchup for A&M secondary right now. Having those, Bryce Young on the move, making plays with those receivers running around. So they're going to have to not only get pressure, but get home and probably force several turnovers. If they can get a fumble or interception, which as good as the defense has been, they haven't been good getting turnovers. So that's going to need to change. But again, that's all hypothetical stuff. I don't see much of that happening. Bryce Young has taken care of the ball extremely well all year. Alabama's been able to run the ball well. A&M's defense has been pretty susceptible to the run. So, you look at Bama's offense and they're a lot more balanced, I guess, this year, and they don't make as many explosive plays, which is probably just because they don't have Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and all those guys. But they're extremely efficient, and that's what I expect to see this weekend. I would be surprised if A&M can move the ball much on offense. Alabama knows if you stop the run and make Calzada beat you, he can't do it. So I think the point spread's opened up at 17.5. I don't know what it's at now, but I would take
17.5. Yeah.
I would take Alabama. Similar to Georgia, I think I'm going to take Alabama the rest of the year until someone proves they can, match up with them. So take Alabama in the points. As an A&M fan, that would be my advice.
So I'm going to go back to the Mississippi State game real quick before we get out of here. What made Mike Elko decide to not play drop 8 against Mississippi State? Every other team that just consistently does it play after play after play has shut down that offense. Every play in Mike Leach's arsenal is a man beater. And A&M came out and played man coverage about half the time against Mississippi State.
Yeah, I don't know. That's I was a little bit puzzled by their strategy as well. They were, for the most part, they were only rushing 3, at least on the D line. They had a lot of 3-down fronts or 3-man fronts. But yeah, I really don't know. I think they meant seeing how well Will Rogers was going to be able to operate, because when they brought pressure, Rogers knew exactly where it was coming from, and he hit his hot route. And then, like you said, when they would go to man, you could tell how quickly he picked it up, and he made him pay. I mean, they had that one touchdown before half where he threw kind of a longer fade down the sideline, because he knew immediately, hey, I got one-on-one with I think it was Polk who caught that one, and he just threw it up, and it was a great throw and catch. I really, like I said, I think if you're being critical of the Aggie defense this past weekend, it was more about sort of the scheme and strategy than actual execution, because it seemed like they just didn't have a good plan. I think really they thought they were going to be able to get a lot more pressure and get home with their D line. And once they weren't really able to do that, they had their secondary left out on islands that were getting picked apart. And then when they were in zone, they just didn't do a good enough job on the back end of staying with guys. But that's easier said than done when you've got 5 people running around and you've got Will Rogers, who again looked incredibly comfortable. So I think it was a little bit of Rogers having a good game, and also A&M not really having a great plan that allowed him to just build up that confidence early and figure out how to attack them.
Yeah, I've been telling Mississippi State fans, they're complaining about the offense and everything. It's like, no, look in the fourth quarter whenever plays had to be made and comebacks had to happen. The offense started looking like the offense was supposed to look because they were forced to do that. And that was the flashing to let you know that this is coming along. And eventually this will take hold with what's going on, and it'll be the everyday thing. So Mississippi State is working towards being good. The transformation is happening.
Yeah, it really is. Going again, when you watch that game back, again, you can point to a ton of things that A&M needed to do better to win. But that Mississippi State offense was looking exactly how you would think a Mike Leach offense is supposed to look. They were executing extremely well. They took shots when they needed to, when there was a zone or they had guys over the top on A&M's defense. They took what was given to them and were dinking and dunking. So that was, again, it was just a great game plan, I think, by Leach and that coaching staff, and great execution by Rogers and that wide receiver group to really just play pretty much mistake-free football, and just take what the defense gave them. So, if you're a Mississippi State fan, I think you should be encouraged with how they looked. And again, when you look at their whole schedule, I mean, they've been in every single game, and the 2 games that they lost, one of them was pretty fluky. And even LSU, like we talked about, hit a couple big plays, but it's not like LSU ran away with that one by any means. So they've been in every game, and I think they probably will be for the most part moving forward.
Yeah. All right. For the Hammer, I'm Stephen Willis. Thank you for tuning in to this Biscuits and SEC Week 6 preview. He'll be back next week to preview the SEC Week 7 slate. Until then, we'll see you next time.